attacks over the weekend went even beyond America's NATO allies to, yet again, our very own service members. When he questioned the whereabouts of Nikki Haley's husband, Major Michael Haley, who is currently serving a year-long active duty deployment in Africa with the South Carolina Army National Guard, of which Donald Trump is well aware. And this amounts to just the latest in Trump's long and very public history of disparaging comments about military heroes and active duty troops, despite never having served a day in his life, thanks to 5 controversial deferments from the Vietnam War. After quickly firing back over the weekend, here's what Haley said this afternoon. Take a listen.
This wasn't a slip of the tongue for Trump. When he goes off his teleprompter, that's him speaking from the heart. And it's a pattern. Donald Trump's never come anywhere near a military uniform. Apparently he had bone spurs, and that's why he couldn't serve. He's never had to lay on the ground like a military man or woman would. He's never had to fight for survival like so many of them sacrifice to go do. The most harm he's ever come across is whether a golf ball hits him on a golf cart. And you're going to go and mock our men and women in the military. I don't care what party you're in, that's not okay.
President Joe Biden, too, had this to say about Trump's disrespect of military members. Quote, "We know he thinks our troops are suckers, but this guy wouldn't know service to this country if it slapped him in the face." Joining our conversation, retired U.S. Marine Corps lieutenant and founder of Democratic Majority Action PAC, Amy McGrath. And with me at the table, founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and host of the Independent Americans podcast, Paul Rieckhoff. Amy, we've been here before. We've talked about all this unsurprising, but just as alarming, your reaction to what you've heard from the former president.
This is just another one in a long line of Donald Trump giving the middle finger to those people who have served this country and their families. I mean, this is what he's done. Look, in the past, he's called veterans suckers and losers. He went to the war, the graves of war dead, American war dead in Europe, and turned to the person next to him and said, you know, I don't get it. What was in it for them? Why did they do this? You know, he doesn't understand what service is. He famously mocked John McCain and said, I only like people who weren't captured. He wouldn't sit next to a wounded post 9/11 veteran during a parade because he said it looked bad for him. I mean, seriously, this is the guy who wants to be commander-in-chief again. And the most disturbing thing about all of this to me is really not Donald Trump. He's shown us who he is. It's the fact that Republicans in Congress and Republican leaders around the United States still follow this man. You know, where is the party that used to be the party of national security, that used to be the party of veterans, and they're still following him? Every single Republican member of Congress should answer this question. Why do you follow a man that disparages veterans as much as Donald Trump does?
Especially, Paul, when you have Nikki Haley setting up such a distinct contrast, right? Talking very clearly about the sacrifices that she and her family have made in the name of service to this country, talking about the fact that Donald Trump has no such experience, doesn't even have reverence for that service. And the line between them is not partisan. Right. They are both Republicans. So that should give Republicans an opportunity to line up behind her, even if you're not going to say she's my candidate, to just say, I stand with her in terms of how I see people who have chosen to serve this country.
They should, but they won't. Donald Trump is a disgusting human being. He's a terrible person. And it's revealed time and time again, but especially when he continues to be a political flamethrower against people in uniform. It happened with John McCain. It happened with Kelly. It happened with the Khan family. It happened with Alex Vindman. It happens over and over again. And it shows how he has no integrity. It shows how he has no honor. And I also think it's bad politically. I think this is exactly the kind of thing that drives away moderate Republicans, which are still out there, drives away independents especially, and in swing states. base. 50% of veterans are independent. These are the people that he's fighting tooth and nail against Biden for. And I think these things continue to pile up and drive those people away. And he continues to attack all kinds of other groups that are popular. He attacks Travis Kelce. He attacks Taylor Swift, right? But these are people who have devoted followings and constituencies. And if you keep attacking people, you're going to drive people away. And I think it's going to pile up for him in November.
I'm not going to play you the sound, Amy, of all of the times that he has disparaged members of the armed services. Between your recitation and Paul's, I think we got sort of a complete picture of the number of times that he has done that. It matters, though, in terms of morale, right? To have a once commander-in-chief of the military act as though he doesn't have regard for that military, act as though he doesn't understand the sacrifices of that military. You know, there are all these questions about recruitment for the U.S. military. You even had Nikki Haley sitting around after a debate talking about how it's because, like, men aren't as strong as men used to be. That's not it. It's about the fact that you want to feel that the sacrifice is understood and honored by those in power.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the fact that he said what he said in disparaging veterans, Democrats certainly need to be talking about this. But it makes it hard to recruit. I mean, who wants to go into a military where the commander in chief thinks so poorly of you putting on the uniform and the sacrifices that you have to make and your family has to make to serve this country, and the commander in chief himself doesn't get it, doesn't understand it? I mean, it's just a slap in the face. It's going to hurt recruitment. And the bigger piece here is sort of what you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
With Trump's remarks about pulling out of NATO. It's one thing to disparage veterans. It's another thing to make some of the most dangerous remarks that I think I've ever heard a president or former president make in terms of international security in my lifetime. And it's not just Americans listening, it's our allies. But you better believe that our veterans are listening to that too, because you know what? They fought to secure the world that we all live in right now. Those folks that fought in the Cold War and won the Cold War, it was their sacrifices that got us here. And I'll tell you what, that is something that Democrats need to be talking about over and over again here in 2024.
I'm so glad that Amy connected the dots between what we're talking about and what we're talking about now, because it's all part and parcel. Right? It is about a lack of patriotism. It is about not understanding what it means to be a leader in the free world. And quite frankly, it's a disinterest.
Yeah. And a lack of discipline, right? Or maybe even total corruption.
And the stakes are very high.
As high as possible, right? We're talking about NATO alliances. We're talking about enemies with nukes. We're talking about critical alliances that are holding the line for freedom right now in places like Ukraine. I think that this cuts to the core of what this country is all about. But the question that Amy poses is the right one. Can Biden and the Democrats weaponize this? Can they break through their communications echo chambers and take this to the American people? They've got to figure out ways to be more effective than Biden. They've got to find other surrogates. They've got to find new forms of communication to weaponize this kind of content, because this is effective. But the question is, do Republicans see it? Do independents see it? Do people not watching this network see it? And I think that's the challenge for Biden throughout the spring and the summer, is to use that to his advantage and to press it in the next couple of months.
To find a trusted messenger who can take that message to